Hi everyone, it's Joe Veneri, the host of Fitt Insider, the show where I talk with the entrepreneurs, executives, and investors who are redefining the business of fitness and wellness. Today I'm joined by Aaron de Jong, CEO of Movr, an app that makes healthy movement more accessible for everyone. In this episode, we talk about Aaron's journey from fitness instructor and studio owner to startup founder. We discuss the company's approach to improving mobility and strength through movement assessment and mini workouts, and Aaron shares his plan to bring Movr's technology to other fitness platforms. A quick reminder before we get into today's show. Every Tuesday, we send a weekly newsletter filled with insights and analysis on the business of fitness and wellness. Join other decision makers and industry operators by subscribing at insider.fit.co. Let's get into it. Hi, Aaron. Welcome to Fitt Insider. Thanks for joining us.
Very excited to be here, Joe. Thanks for having me and look forward to chatting today.
Yeah, man. Excited to chat and have you tell us a little bit about Movr. So getting right into it. Yeah, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us about what you're working on?
Yeah, my name is Aaron de Jong, founder of the Movr app. I come from the studio. I had a studio in Vancouver for the better part of a decade and was doing something really special there and, have evolved the on-the-floor concept of how we were prescribing exercise into a digital piece of technology. And it's our goal is to help people move better. And I think there's a lot to unpack there today in conversation.
For sure. I think just like right off the top, what was happening in the studio? Obviously there's, as someone myself as well, who's worked one-on-one or in a group setting with people, it's a very special kind of relationship. And it also allows you, to kind of be right there and make the corrections necessary or give the coaching. What was happening in the studio? How are you transitioning and conveying that in the digital app?
Yeah, I can talk a bit about the early studio days and where I came from. I went to school for physical education and had this mindset of, educating people. Teaching in high schools didn't work out for me. I was working on the side as a personal trainer. Fast forward a couple of years, I really wanted to create a community space that was really focused on health and how people felt in their bodies. So I opened up my own studio and became, alongside that, a Lululemon ambassador. And by accident, my studio that I opened grew rapidly. And it grew faster than I could have ever imagined. And within the first 6 months, I started asking why was that happening? This is a very fortunate problem when someone starts their own business, lots of early startup fear those years ago. And I started asking people, and they're like, I just feel better when I leave. So I wanted to understand and codify that. And what we were doing every day on the studio floor that was different was we were doing exercise assessments on people when they walked in. So we look at how are people moving? How does that look in terms of a functional range and norm that I, as a trainer, had been trained to assess? And then how could we positively change that by prescribing intelligent exercises for their body? So that was the focus. And as that sort of system got smarter, and I was able to scale that by first, training other trainers how to think in that logic and how to do those assessments and exercise prescription, I realized that there was a system there that could be, what I didn't know is codified into something technology based, but I knew it had to scale. So I fortunately met my now co-founder with Movr, who's our chief technology officer, and literally in a coffee shop on the back of a napkin, he drew up what he thought was a smart leveling system for exercise. We qualified things based on, movement patterns and intensities and complexity for your body to figure out how to do, and started writing, I wouldn't say we were writing code, definitely not, but he started writing logic that would, organize information in a way that could be scaled into an app, which was many years ago. And it's taken us a long time to get to where we are today in terms of having a product in the market. And we're very, very excited about, continuing to scale that early day success in studio into something digital that's much bigger than anything that we could have done in person.
And then making that leap. I mean, it's one thing to be someone who comes from that world, has a studio, trains people. You mentioned meeting your co-founder and being able to apply technology to this. I guess jumping ahead a little bit, what does that experience look like today? Me as a user, I download the app. What can I expect?
Yeah, I think today what you'd experience is something that we designed aesthetically that would be very, very welcoming. You'd come into the app. The first thing that you do is answer a few questions. Those questions are super simple. What do you do all day? Do you sit or do you stand? Why are you here? Is it generally to feel better? Is it to sweat a whole bunch? Is it to develop mobility? Very, very straightforward questions from a trainer's perspective that heavily influence the type and style of things that you should be prescribed. And then very shortly after, the first thing you're asked to do is do a movement assessment. So it's a self-guided 10-step test. Each test or assessment, I should say, has 5 outcomes, and none of them are good or bad. It's just, how does your body move? And the brilliance behind what we did was, with taking away the pass-fail or I got a 5 instead of a 3, we were able to create a logic system or a web that enables us to, on the back end, say, okay, Joe can't touch his toes, so we want that to happen before we give him a heavily loaded squat. Or Joe can't touch his toes and he wants to run really far. We think that if we can get him to touch his toes, he's going to be able to run far and feel good while he can do it. So, we've created this big web of the user experience going through that assessment, and then we prescribe you exercise. And those exercises are distributed in 5-minute sets, or if you are very excitable and want to jump into longer sets of exercise or workouts, there's 15, 30, 45, and 60-minute options, all curated and customized based on your movement profile.
Yeah, I think it's such an important part, really understanding where people are, meeting them where they are, and then helping them, over time get to where they want to be. With that, it sounds like such a simple and important idea. Where does this fit into the market when you think of not only who this app is for, but thinking about from a business perspective, is this an exercise and fitness? Is this kind of like mobility? And, we see a lot of companies today kind of down this path of kind of chronic pain management with some of the exercises that they're prescribing. How do you think about where Movr fits in and who ultimately you're serving?
Yeah, I think that's such a good question. And early days, you want to have a super specific target market, right? Just to get that product market fit and make sure that you're solving a core problem for people who are experiencing it every day. So my answer will have a few different parts. I think number one, when we first launched the app, it was like anybody who likes exercise, and we realized that was way too broad. So we sort of whittled our way down to anybody who has functional lifestyle goals that they want to feel good in. And that could be working without neck pain. That could be playing with your kids and being able to get down to the floor, or doing your yoga practice and not having knee discomfort. There's very specific things that we all experience in our day that our messaging with Movr really tries to speak to. And our audience today, who we're really focused on growing into, is that workplace environment where people are now, working remote or hybrid, or going back to an office landscape where their needs are unique because their bodies are unique and they are busy. So we think 5-minute sets of exercise based on how your body moves is definitely a piece that we're excited about leaning into. And we've got some exciting partnerships with Gym Pass. We're on Twick. We're on, we've met with June, who are up and coming workplace benefits platforms that we're super excited about being part of their portfolio of services that are helping solve that problem. And so I think we fit right between the sort of meditation and low intensity stretch world and that, traditional fitness technology, which would be high intensity, lots of sweat, get a 6-pack. We're not either of those. We're, your everyday tool to move for 5 to 15 minutes that we know scientifically helps you move and feel better.
I think it's part of, you touched on a couple of them there, like this meditation, and then obviously some of the higher intensity stuff. We've seen these other categories, evolve and emerge. just recovery and sleep. Not that we weren't already doing these things and not that companies weren't there, but now them being like kind of pillars within the broader health and wellness industry. How do you think about like the mobility, the exercise, whether that's prescriptive or corrective? Do you think that it's kind of naturally happening or already happened, that this is a category unto itself, or that Movr has to do the work of like helping to create this category as it attracts, consumers? I guess the question is it there from like the category perspective, or like you feel like you're doing the work of creating this category?
We talk about this internally all the time. And I think when we first launched, I believed that we would go and create this category. I thought that we could be leaders in it. I think that, we had some really early support and mentorship with my good friend Tom from Lululemon, who's their chief science officer, who really helped us push and ideate into some, big thinking that could shift an industry's perspective. And the thing that we've consistently come up against is mobility and recovery and doing things that are lower intensity aren't necessarily sexy. I think what we've discovered is that people love outcomes that are measurable, and they want things that are glossy or have been promised from a brand perspective that they can go and achieve. So we're committed to leaning into being leaders in the mobility, recovery, and optimization category of exercise and health. That is our foundation. And I think what we've on a hugely exciting, shift in our vision over the last years, our technology has been built in a way that our assessment and prescription engine is not only specific to Movr content. So we've started looking across the industry and saying, how are other platforms organizing and cataloging their exercises? And could we connect the way we assess and level exercise to other platforms? And the answer is yes. And we're now working on that being something that we can scale out to multiple platforms and saying, okay, Joe, say you work out on the Nike Training Club, you have a Calm membership that has some stretching in it, and you're part of Apple TV Plus, the sweat stuff that they've got going on. Based on you doing the Movr assessment, we believe that we could say, here's what you should be doing within those platforms based on your body. And that's something that we think, instead of saying, come work out with Movr, we think, go do the things you love, but here's what we believe is best for you.
Yeah, I think that's really compelling as you think about, everybody, what we're talking about at this point is personalization. It's to some extent a buzzword, but in reality, kind of like the leveling up of what digital fitness has become beyond just saying, I'm going to show you some things in your feed or home screen that you might like because you liked other similar things, right? So personalization right now is kind of still very early. But going to the place where this platform understands how I move, it understands what I'm capable of, understands my movement patterns and the intensity that I'm not only want to, but capable of working out at, that kind of changes things a little bit. I know it's early in terms of thinking about how, you do this in other platforms, but kind of zooming out or maybe fast forwarding a little bit, how might that play out? Or is it even too early to tell at this point?
Well, I think just to address one of the things you mentioned there, I think the biggest difference and the thing that we've really separated in conversations internally is, personalization is there's preferences and then there's prescription, right? And right now, most content that we see is personalized based on our preferences. And preferences can be very easily manipulated. They can be distorted based on branding or promises or what you think is good for you, but you haven't done the research or you don't know any better because it's not a category that you're well versed in. And I think that it's important to listen and to give people what they want, always. Preferences are fundamental to how we make decisions and enjoy, all the things we consume in our life. And then on the other side, it's like, but don't we want the thing that's very much the best for us? And we probably want it without working too hard. And so I think when we start talking about assessments or putting in a little bit of personal information on that objectively is just saying, this is how you do or don't move. it provides an opportunity to then say, here's what your body needs along with your preferences. And that's what I believe is the opportunity in the personalization space, and what we're so excited about. I think, to follow on your second question there, it is early, but we're demonstrating some success with some examples that we're doing right now and some research that we're doing, applying our algorithm to other existing content out in the space. And we're really excited about those results that we're looking at, and excited to bring this to more content platforms as we grow this out. So yes, you're right, early days, but I think what isn't early is how many years we've spent on tweaking our prescription engine, and we've built it in a way that it can continue to evolve intelligently, really to only continue to get smarter and help more people move better, again, in a platform agnostic way.
Yeah, I think that was really well put, the difference between preferences and prescription. Just wanted to call that out. I'm sure folks will come back to that one. So we talked a little bit about how we got here and how the product itself is evolving. What does it look like from a business model perspective? How are you thinking about, the subscription and customer acquisition, the various things that go into building the business on top of this app and experience itself?
Yeah, I think that's been something that has lagged behind in terms of, we very much focused on tech and building something that we're passionate about, and then getting it out into market. I think building the business model behind it, there's so many ways of thinking about that, right? Of just build something, then get as many users as possible, and then figure out monetization later. For us, it was very important through 2020 to figure out a concrete monetization plan. So we built in premium versus our freemium model. So anybody who can go in the app today will have access to both doing your assessment and some self-selected minis that we've put together that are very sort of situationally specific. And then you can subscribe to premium, which unlocks your stats. It unlocks the prescribed minis for you. It unlocks your ability to do larger sets of exercise, along with building in-app community groups. So we're excited about that functionality, and it's super affordable. We costed it as, you would something that you're just using a little bit every day. So right now it's $5 American a month. And what that did for us that was really positive was it gave us sort of a baseline line in the sand of how we can go and look at corporate partnerships. So right now we offer Movr on a few different platforms that I mentioned earlier in this conversation. And we also work direct with companies. And what we do is, if somebody wants to bring Movr to their company and within their health and wellness benefits package or portfolio, we subsidize the monthly cost based on the size of the company. And we also do large scale activations for companies where we're a lot more hands-on and helping meet specific goals within the organization. So that's kind of the sort of B2B, B2C plan. And we're leaning into that and growing. I mean, that's been some very recent success that we're super excited about. So we're leaning into some paths of least resistance there. And then as we look forward towards this larger sort of tech relationship where we'll likely be building an API and wanting to go direct to larger platform players, there's definitely going to be a platform fee that we work on. But our primary focus right now is to go build it in a way that could be functional on multiple platforms.
Yeah, definitely. I think it makes a lot of sense. And it's cool to see kind of both of those things, or I guess a couple different avenues emerge as you think about what's possible with the technology and the platform that you're building. In addition to the business model, one of the other things I wanted to touch on, how have you approached fundraising and building the team? Obviously, full transparency, we're an investor through Fitt Insider. We're really excited by the mission, the vision, the execution that you brought to the table in terms of, getting more people moving, taking care of themselves, applying that to the prescription and not just kind of preferences or more aesthetic focused exercise. I'm so excited to be involved in that way. But what has your thought process been as you raise funding, grow the team, and think about scaling this thing up?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it's one of those things that just incrementally you kind of half know what you're doing and then you're half learning every day, right? So 5 years ago, I asked my parents for $50,000 and they obliged. I think I believed I would be able to do what Spotify did with exercise and somehow convince them to believe it too. And that money we were able to stretch a long way. That was our, very early investment. And then I put a ton of sweat equity in because I just believed in what we were doing based on my day-to-day experience with clients in my studio and with the trainers that were working there. We grew. We did a small financing to kind of bridge that early stage into the next couple of years. And we got some great strategic investment that we're super excited about. And then over this last year with COVID, it really was the turning point for our company. We went past saying our app works to then leaning into, we did some academic research that was just recently published, which really validated these claims of ours that we could improve people's functional movement. We raised, $1 million, just over $1 million in this winter that you guys were I was so happy you guys participated in. And we're still a small team. We're tremendously early. We just completed an angel round, as mentioned, and we're really looking at this, executing the goals we set out from that financing and looking at what our next opportunity are. And we'll likely be raising capital in the next 6 to 12 months to look to raise a few $1 million to really get our product into people's hands, because, it's much more exciting than it was a year versus 2 years ago.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity there as you continue to grow. You talked about, still being early, relatively small team. What does the team consist of now, or rather who, in terms of those roles? And then as you think about growing, how are you thinking about building the team, not only from the, perspective of what maybe those roles or departments might be, but the culture, especially in a world where, it might be remote or all the different challenges that have presented itself over the last year. How are you thinking about continuing to build the team and culture?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think in part, what I just said about that half learning every day, I've been loving listening to your conversations with so many, founders and CEOs of tech companies in the space, because where we are today, everybody who's ahead of us has been, right? So, last year our team went from 8 down to 3, and it was myself, my CTO, and our lead sort of copy, content, and design. And we're in the process of growing back out. So, we've got a community engagement manager. We just hired a project manager, brought on a sales coordinator who's going to be continuing to expand that relationship growth in the market where we've created some pretty good traction. And we've been trying to figure out what our long-term development strategy has been. And we're super excited about a team that we found in India that is helping us out with a lot of the lifting on our development side. And, our logic has really been to hire slow, but super intentionally, and bring in the right person. And I think that's been something at times where we've, felt the strains of wearing many hats. And then we're like, we definitely need to bring someone in to wear this hat specifically. And in doing that more methodically over the last 5 months, we've brought in some great pieces. We're growing definitely more on the customer and community relations side, while our CTO has built almost another pillar or vertical in our company where there's this whole beehive of activity behind the scenes that propels our technology forward. So definitely looking at that growth being exciting this year, and we'll be looking at continuing out to see. I think from a community growth standpoint and more of a marketing and storytelling standpoint, more in towards this fall as we sort of continue to compile our story and bring up to speed the technology based on the last round of financing.
Yeah, I think much like personalization, community is a word that gets discussed a lot. I think it's incredibly important when done right. And within that, there's a lot of different approaches to it, and it means kind of different things to different people. When you talk about community, given that you have a background in fitness, you're a Lululemon ambassador, you had your own studio, what does community mean to you when you're talking about it in this sense, applying it to a digital product and how you want to build that for the company?
That's a fantastic question. I think everyone's trying to solve, digital community. And I think the big thing is I had a great call with somebody who I was put in touch with from Google, and who's in charge of their sort of internal health and wellness, and got referred to this book called Building Brand Communities, and, worked through that book. And my whole career has been on the floor working and engaging with real life humans. And so I had this huge knowledge base of, what drives interactions and personal, questions and checking in on how they're doing and following up on something that you remember from your last interaction and body language and all those things. And our constant goal is, one, to create the product experience to be one that's not, I don't want to say corporate, but just stale, or too polished. We like bringing in some little touches of humor, or whether that be a smile from one of the persons that are doing the exercise demonstrations in the app. It's just trying to make it human to connect with people. And I think we're actively evolving our community groups portal within the app, which we're excited about the upcoming feature developments in there, where you can work alongside people, see their stats, see where you are in relation to them. But really, it's trying to encourage the right habits. So instead of saying, Joe's done way more workouts that are harder than me, it's more that, Joe's been in the app these last few days and he just sent you a high five for coming back in. We're looking at features that encourage the health behavior we're looking for, along with creating, everyone's looking for virality, but really we're just trying to create a means for authentic connection that supports a healthy habit.
Yeah, I think that's hugely important as you think about building community as it relates to both growing the audience, the consumers and users, but also kind of that adherence within the platform itself. So balancing those two things is hugely important. Yeah, as we get towards the end of the conversation here, I know we've talked about a lot of different things, both in terms of what's happening now, but also looking forward a little bit, just kind of tying a bow around that as you think about, I guess the second half of 2021 after what was a crazy year last year. What are some of those, if you think of them as milestones or KPIs that you have to say, if we do these things, we'll be success and really move the company forward in terms of what you want to achieve?
It's an ever-evolving question that we're trying to, create a goal and then one-up it constantly internally. But I think ultimately, if we're actively engaging with more people through these partner platform relationships, we'd love to land 2 or 3 more relationships, whether that be with health benefits platforms or direct to some large companies who have large employee bases, because we do know that Movr works and it works very efficiently to help people move better. So we want to expand that portal of sort of business growth. And then the big one that I'll circle back on is I think that the technology that we're creating, or that we have and that we're just trying to connect with the market, is something that is truly revolutionary. I think that it's not a heavy lift in terms of trying to understand or needing to learn a whole bunch of new information from an end user standpoint when you come in and do a movement assessment. And I think us continuing to modify and create that experience to be a simple one will unlock movement in a way that I think people aren't aware of as possible in their life. And that's what I've seen in person. That's what I've seen from people who use Movr currently. And I do think, plugging into, we'll say 3 to 5 other platforms by the end of this year is something that if we achieve that, I'll be calling you and be like, hey man, can I get back on your podcast? I know you don't do follow-ups that often, but I got to tell you about this.
Yeah, I'd be happy to have that happen and host it. It's we're getting to the point now. It's the conversations. It's almost we have to circle back and see what folks are up to. So certainly put you on the short list as we wrap up there with those goals in mind. Thinking about some of the connections and folks that may be interested in learning more or trying the app. What's the best way for them to check you out?
Yeah, I mean, first off, I always encourage people to put my money where my mouth is and just go download the Movr app. And it's Movr in the App Store, both Android and iOS. So you can check that out. You can message in-app and our customer support team will help you out. If you want to reach out to me, it's Aaron, Aaron, movewithmovr.com. I'm always keen for new connections and meetings and ideating with people who are interested in what we're up to. And I think too, specifically, if there's kind of 3 people that we're growing into, and that's anybody who's interested in bringing Movr to their teams. I want to talk with you. If there's any, people involved with health tech platforms that found today's conversation exciting, then I want to talk to you. And I think, down the line, there's going to be investment opportunities in what we're doing because we see a tremendous growth opportunity, and that requires, financing it for the stage that we're at. So there's lots of opportunities of things that I'm super excited to talk to folks about. And I invite those connections.
Yeah, man, I'm glad you made a few minutes to chat today. Certainly encourage folks who are interested to reach out and learn more, and excited to share this conversation. Thanks, Aaron, for making some time today.
I appreciate being on here. A bit of I feel imposter syndrome after listening to some of your other conversations, and just a ton of gratitude and excited for this to be out in the world.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, everyone, for listening to today's episode. For more from Fitt Insider, visit insider.fit.co and subscribe to our weekly newsletter for insights and analysis on the business of fitness and wellness. Then, go ahead and subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. See you next time.